Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live stream poetry podcast on the planet, in your ear and in your laptops, streaming around the world on Spotify and iTunes and all that good stuff. We're so glad to have you here for tonight's guest. Bill Hollands is here. He'll be here with us with just a little bit. Before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this. We love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help poetry spread around the internet would be much appreciated. And now we're going to take a look, as we always do, at our Poets Respond Poet of the Week. And it's a familiar face. And I didn't go through and see who has the lead for most Poets Respond poems. But Dante Stefano might be the one. And it's great to see you again, Dante. How you doing?
Great, Tim. Thanks for having me, and thanks for picking this poem this week.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And this was, there were a few topics that came up a lot this week. This was one of them. And in a lighter, but then, undertones of deeper things going on in the story itself. So how did you know when you were going to write a poem about this topic? Because you're one of the wonderful poets we love who writes poems most weeks. It's just great to have you doing that. But did you know that this was the story you're going to write about, or did you play with some other poems too? How'd that work?
Well, I've just been wanting to write a poem about the public swimming pool for a couple of years, and I couldn't find a way into it. And every week I go through the news and look for a story and write about it, and then submit one to Poets Respond. And this week, this story provided me with a way into the poem that I've been wanting to write for a while. So.
Yeah, and like so many of your poems too, I mean, they come from real life. I mean, they had this feel of what you're actually doing. So we kind of a sense of what Dante's up to as the poems are coming out. I remember, I think the last one we had that was the Christmas one. We were crawling out of the Christmas tree.
Yep, that's right.
So do you know in the moment, when the poem's going to happen based on those kind of personal experiences? Like, do you have a kind of even just mental journal that you keep for experiences that might come up in poems, or do they come up in the process of engaging with the material?
I think it's just when I sit down to write, and sometimes I carry around a subject with me for a while. And obviously, we're always kind of accumulating images in our daily life. Like everything that was in this poem, every image, it's all things I saw this week, So, and then the poem just comes from there in the moment. I don't consciously write down things as they're happening to me in life. I just kind of live my life and then sit down and write every once in a while and hope it works out. And sometimes it does, as you know, and sometimes it doesn't. So.
Yeah. Well, this one, to set the stage, if people haven't seen it, this is a new ad for American Eagle jeans, I believe, right? American Eagle? Yeah, American Eagle jeans.
Yes.
And that's the actress Sydney Sweeney sort of putting on jeans in a provocative way. And then she says, I have good genes, which is what everybody's talking about. And in a way, I think, like the fashion shows go, it's more about generating publicity about controversy than it is about anything else. Yeah. And so I guess it worked from an advertising perspective. Yes. But a lot of interesting things coming up here. Do you want to go ahead and read the poem?
Sure. American Eagle Unsonnet. No one at the public pool looks like Sydney Sweeney, not the dad barking at his backstroking daughter in a mix of English and Mandarin, not the woman with the bright smile and the black swim hijab, not the middle schoolers locked together like Tetris bricks falling under closed eyelids, whose embrace makes everyone nostalgic and uncomfortable. Not the new mom with her C-section scar peeking out from her green bikini bottom. Not even the tan teenage lifeguards twirling their whistles and now and then blurting out a muffled "don't run" through their megaphones at scampering little ones who dive into the deep end like my daughter and son. We are hot, not like a beautiful blonde actress draped in denim, her spine arched toward the ether of a common desire to be held in the cool blue gaze of too much abundance and the touch of another whose breath blooms lilac and salt water and breeze. We do not have good genes or good genes, but we, with our high BMIs, sunburnt noses, and archipelagos of acne climbing each rib cage, we have our eyes focused on our children who are splashing and turning somersaults and cannonballing beside us in this chlorinated heaven we are all floating through, each of us having peed a bit, if we're honest, and not too shy admitting it, because I think we are one body in this space, bound by the fact that our attention is on these miraculous, innocent, joyful, small half fish we have fathered and mothered forth into the waves and wet and wreck of this world, where they will have to learn to sprout gills and knife through the murky depths.
Yeah, great poem as always. So vivid, so many great lines. Just always a pleasure to read your poems, Dante. Thanks for being here and for sharing that one with us this week.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Yeah, take care. Once again, that was Dante to Stefano with today's poem, American Eagle Unsonnet. And just wonderful. If you have a poem you'd like to submit about current events, anything going on in the last week, that's what we do, try to keep poetry relevant, part of the national and international dialogue. All you have to do is submit it by midnight Friday night, and then we'll get to read it Saturday morning, and we'll publish one poem at least on Sunday. So that was Sunday's poem. And if you'd like to receive those, if you don't already get them by email, go to rattle.com. At the very bottom of the website, you'll see the sign-up page. You join 25,000 other people getting those poems delivered to your inbox every day. And we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Bill Hollands. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Bill Hollands. Bill was born and raised in Miami, Florida, graduated from Williams College, and received an MA in English as a Dr. Herchel Smith Fellow at Cambridge University. He worked for the New York Public Library and Microsoft before becoming a high school English teacher. He lives in Seattle with his husband and their son. A multiple Best of the Net and Pushcart nominee. He's been a finalist for North American Review's James Hearst Poetry Prize, Sycamore Review's Wabash Prize in Poetry, Smartish Paish's Erskine J. Poetry Prize, and the New Ohio Review's NORward Prize. He also reads submissions for Poetry Northwest and is a 2025 Jack Straw Writing Fellow. So a whole bunch going on. His debut collection, Mangrove, is out now from ELJ Editions. And here he is, Bill Hollands. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Hey, Tim. Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's great to meet you. It was a really fun rattle-style book. And, you know, we lament very frequently within the our editorial meetings at Rattle that there aren't more Rattle-style poets. It used to be proliferate, just a lot of poets who told stories and were really down to earth. And there's a certain classic rattle style. We had a podcast episode once called "The Classic Rattle Poem," and it was really fun to read your book because it's full of classic rattle poems, I'd say. So it's great to have you on and good to learn more about your work.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to start out with a poem? The second Ginger Grant is first.
Sure. Yeah. Um, so this is the first poem in the book, and it takes its inspiration from the 1960s TV show Gilligan's Island about the seven castaways on a deserted island, and particularly sort of semi-famous episode about the girl next door, Marianne, who hits her head and thinks that she's Ginger Grant, the glamorous movie star. So this is called the second Ginger Grant, and it has it takes some lines from the show, and those are in italics. The second Ginger Grant. You hit your head, and when you wake up, you think you're Ginger. You rehearse lines. You wear leopard skin dresses. The other castaways want you to be Marianne again. They don't say why. They try hypnosis, but that makes Gilligan think he's Marianne. They come up with a plan. They'll ask you to put on a show. The professor says, as Ginger, she'll want to perform, but underneath, as Marianne, she'll know she can't. This will create a tremendous conflict in her mind, and the real world of Marianne will push out the dream world of Ginger, and Marianne will become Marianne again. The show begins. You wear a blue sequined dress, diamond drop earrings, a white feather boa. You sing, I want to be loved by you, just you and nobody else but you. I want to be loved by you alone. Boop, boop, a doop. But you're off key. The castaways cringe, the laugh track plays, the plan is working. You forget the words, your eyes full of panic, as I take it all in after school from my living room floor. Maestro, would you start the record again, please? Maybe if I just dance it, I'll be all right. You dance, but it's all wrong. You trip on the feather boa, fall, and hit your head. You wake up, you're Marianne. What a drag.
Yeah, so that was the second Ginger Grant by Bill Hollands from his book Mangrove. And when you let me know this book was out, Bill, you mentioned, or I looked up your bio, I think, and I always like to have guests who've done different things and then come into writing books later, because there's interesting things to talk about. And one of the things I saw was that you were a librarian, first of all. We had a librarian poets issue a while ago. That's always important to us, of course. But you're also the first internet librarian at the New York Public Library back in the 90s. And I just wonder, what that was like being in that position is that the internet came to be, and how that might have steered you. How does poetry fit into that career path?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting, fun job. It was kind of my first career sort of job. And so I went to University of Michigan for library school in the early 90s, and that was, the internet was kind of taking off then. And uh, Michigan was kind of at the forefront of all that in a lot of ways. And honestly, I'm not particularly techie, and I'm less and less so, but just because I was there at that moment, I got a lot of that. And then my first job out of school then was I moved to New York and was at the New York Public Library as my title was Internet Librarian. And so I got to, it was a great job, especially being new to New York, because one of my roles was to go around and teach all the librarians and the public how to use the internet because it was so new. And so I got to travel all around New York and see parts of the city that I might not have seen otherwise, and got to help launch their first website and um, so that it was a great and fun and interesting job. And actually, I uh, I tell people that this book Mangrove is my debut, but actually I wrote another book, which is a sort of a training manual for librarians on how to use the internet, um, uh, which is incredibly out of date at this point. But um, so uh, I'm not sure, other than being in New York and taking classes at various places and going to lots of readings. I'm not sure exactly how being the internet librarian affected my poetry, but being in that building, on 42nd and 5th, it was very exciting as well. So.
Yeah, yeah. Being in that position, it's an interesting thing to be, especially because, at the time, I don't know if people understood how much the internet would change the world. I mean, to the point of changing just our actual personalities and the way we interact, and the lack of, I don't know, the different kind of discourse that we have. I mean, it's changed so much. The polarization politically and culturally. There's so many things that are sort of downstream consequences of that. And I wonder if you saw any of that coming, given that position you were introducing the internet. Because right now we're going through a similar phase where AI is the new thing that seems maybe as big as the internet for the first time, and it's hard to imagine yourself in the position where you could have seen what was coming.
Yeah, I honestly, I for sure didn't. I don't know if, I mean, maybe people did who were smarter than me, but I don't think I saw it. And I think the pace of change has been more rapid in some ways over the last 5 to 10 years with social media and now AI, that it's really changed how we live. And like I said, I sort of, that was kind of the 90s were sort of my tech moment. And then I've sort of retreated a little bit. I feel less and less engaged with technology. Um, I was a teacher for a while, but I sort of got out of that a couple years ago before AI really took off, and so I haven't had to really deal with that, which is, the major issue these days, of course, for teachers.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I don't think I saw it. I don't think I saw it coming.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, the people who did. I mean, I'm sure it's like just a roll of dice, and then maybe one out of 10 people saw it coming correctly.
Yeah,
Everyone else had different
yeah,
imaginations.
yeah.
Well, let's read another poem, and this is an interesting one. The next one up is a presidential fitness test, and I when we first was looking back at which poem of yours we published, I saw it and I thought, oh, that was a Poets Respond poem, and then I realized no, it's a ekphrastic challenge poem, and the image that went along with this is this wonderful photograph. I can't remember who it's by, of a banana on a wall that's sort of half brown and half like a line, like a Rothko painting almost, with half black, I guess, and half yellow maybe.
Uh-huh.
And so this poem came from that and not from a news story. But interestingly enough, the presidential fitness test is back in the news because I think there was some news story I saw where Trump's talking about bringing it back to our. I mean, I feel sorry for my kids if it makes it in time. That my first thought
Yeah.
was, God, I hope my kids are out of high school by the time it actually comes back because it was pretty rough. So why don't you read this poem first, and then I want to talk a little bit about how it came to be from the ekphrastic image because that's interesting.
Sure. Um, yeah, this one's called Presidential Fitness Test. Every year, we'd suit up for the ritual humiliation. 7 demonstrations of my inadequacy for the red-faced phys ed teacher. Pull-ups were the worst. I'd eke out one, then fall to the ground and look up from the dirt at the underside of his clipboard. Girls did hang time instead, and in fourth grade, Laura Luger hung in there for hours. Like a banana on a hook, she thrust her chin over the metal bar, curled her body into a crescent, and didn't budge. We went back to class, and in between decimals and diagramming sentences, the teacher let us go back outside and have another look at Laura. In my mind, she's hanging there still, in her yellow uniform against the black dirt and the pale of the morning sky.
Yeah, so that was presidential fitness test, and I'll put up on screen for those watching. This is the image that inspired the poem. This banana. Bill can't see it at the moment, but this banana hanging on a hook with a black and white background. And so I'm really curious because this poem, it's one of those wonderful ones for the ekphrastic challenge that strays so far from the image. Like a whole sort of world and story emerges that's tangentially related to this and sort of inspired by it. So do you remember how this poem came? Was it a simple matter of like seeing this banana reminded you of the girl, or is there more to the story than that?
It's been a few years, so I, it's a little hard to recall exactly, but I know this image of Laura hanging was, I mean, that happened a long time ago, but it's one of those images from my childhood that stayed with me for some reason. Um, and, uh, the presidential fitness test was in general, sort of like you were alluding to, so full of emotion and anxiety for most kids, I think. Um, so I don't, and so I knew it was one of those things that I think I probably had in the back of my mind, like I want to write a poem about this image of Laura at some point, but and then I very much remember seeing the image of the banana on the hook. And I know it didn't come to me immediately. I remember thinking, "Gosh, that's a funny image," but then at some point, I looked at the image and I thought of Laura, and it was sort of something about the way the banana is sort of curved around the hook just really reminded me of her body position, hanging there and so who knows, it's one of those like associative things that just kind of happens and it's hard to explain and certainly impossible for me to predict or force. So that's about all I can recall from that.
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's a wonderful moment. It's one of my favorite from the series. Actually, I love the way that it extends so much, and then too, the presidential fitness test is a perfect title too, and that like slight leap. If we go to talk on the critique of the week all the time about titles and how they can function, that's a really good one to it demonstrates the different roles a title can have very well. So good poem there.
Well, thank you.
So let's talk a little bit more about Mangrove. So how did you know? That's always the question because so many people, and this is sort of how it goes. You're writing poems and writing poems and writing poems, and then you realize, oh, I got a bunch of poems. It's time to make a manuscript. So how did you know where you were going, and how did you come up with Mangrove as the title?
Um, well, I didn't, I'll talk a little bit about my sort of history of writing because I wrote a lot, in college and then into my 20s and early 30s, and then I didn't write at all for 20 to 25 years. I just kind of fell out of the poetry world and did other things. And then in 2019, and I don't remember why exactly. I went to Hugo House, a literary center in Seattle, where they have classes, and I took a class with the wonderful poet Janine Walker on poetry and publishing, and it was sort of a half workshop, how do you get published in journals, which I had never learned about. I think in my 20s I mailed one packet to the New Yorker, and when I got the rejection, I was like, well, I tried. um, and so that class and Janine as a great teacher sort of unlocked something in me, and so I started to write again, and also started to get published in some journals, and then pretty much everything, every poem, all the poems except for I think two in the book were written over the next 4 years. So they all came out recently, and I continued to work with Janine and a few other people, just producing more poems until we had a little tutorial going where at one point the conscious goal was to put together a manuscript once we had enough poems. And so we sort of worked together to figure out, how do you order it, and what's the arc, of the book, and should it be in various sections, and things like that. Um, so that uh, so that's what sort of happened there in terms of putting the manuscript together. The title, I hit on the title Mangrove really early, in the sort of process of putting the manuscript together, and I just sort of knew that that was the title. That I grew up in South Florida, and a lot of the poems take place in South Florida, and mangrove trees appear in a number of poems. So it's kind of a motif in a way, and it helps to set the setting, of a lot of the book, I think. And then there's a little bit of a play on words, mangrove, I think, and a lot of it is, a lot of the poems are sort of about the men in my life, and yeah, it's funny. I remember at the time too thinking I had been reading a lot of books with really long titles,
Hmm.
and I wanted a really short title just to do, to go against the grain a little bit.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I wonder if like the best poems come to us quick. Usually, maybe the best titles just appear to us out of the subconscious or whatever it is, because it's a great title.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's hear another poem. Al's Books and News, Miami, is next, and a good one to show off the book. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so yeah, this is about a store that I went to in Miami when I was a kid, where we got all of our school books, and also he sold a lot of other things, as the poem talks about. Al's Books and News, Miami. God, I rode there on my bike, that rust orange 10-speed handlebars like a ram's curled horns. And there's Al. An ostrich in half-moon glasses, flannel shirt, and a wool skull cap. He kept that store cold, a dark secret around the corner from the Army Navy and the A&P. Candy and classics, poetry next to porn. Al went to the back to get my Call of the Wild, and I slipped a copy of Blue Boy into life. My legs shook, and suddenly there's Al, who said, "How about some poetry instead?" Just kidding. That's not what Al said. But here's the great thing about poetry. You can change the ending.
Yeah, that's great. So I love that sudden turn, the breaking of the fourth wall there, and it made me think, wonder about your writing process. So, is this a poem that had a lot of revision to it, or and in general, do you revise a lot? But specifically this poem, I can imagine it being, two ways it coming to be. It can be the kind of poem where you're writing this, and then just that appears to you like a good title does. We were saying that way to end it by shifting into the just kidding, or is it a revision where you had a whole bunch more and found your way to it in a long process?
Um, well, with this poem, I remember it being a long revision process, and I was never sure what the heart of the poem was exactly. It was a lot longer at some points, and I don't remember exactly when I came up with that turn. Um, I think it was that I tried writing the poem with what Al actually said, and it wasn't working. And so I said I thought, well, let's not have what he actually says. And then sort of went from there, I think. But I remember that, unlike some poems which come very quickly and are sort of fully formed right away, this one took a long time. Usually usually what happens when I write is sort of like what Dante was saying. I will walk around with lines in my head, and I do that for a while without committing anything to paper. And I'm sort of most of the time, my best ideas come when I'm walking, often in nature. I think maybe there's some science behind that, um, and so I'll be walking and sort of working out the rhythms in my head, of and adding on as I go, and then often when I then sit down to actually put it on paper, it's fairly the structure as a whole is usually there, and so uh, at that point, it's often a matter of kind of combing through it and making sure the rhythm is right and the beats are right and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so I want to go back to that gap, where you wrote poems a little bit early on and then you didn't for a long time. And obviously you were doing the whole librarian thing and then the whole you worked at Microsoft too, I think, for Encarta Encyclopedia, which is an interesting place. I mean, and maybe we could talk about that too in a little bit, but I want to that gap where you had the sort of the desire to write, and then was it the rejection that made you turn away? Or because I wonder, I feel like we should all be in a world where we're all writing poetry. So many of us, I mean us, but everybody, wrote poems at some point in their lives, whether it was like fifth grade or, is playing with words in the same way we
Yeah.
do doodling. And it's fun in the same way and relieving of stress and things like that. And, it's engaging creatively. There's just so much benefit to it. And then there's just some reason we all, so many of us give it up for so long. And then
Yeah.
so then to come back to it later is really valuable as an experience. So why is it that you gave it up at that point?
Well, I looking back on it, I think it is, well, partly, I was busy, with jobs and family and everything. But I think mostly I didn't have any kind of writing community that I was a part of. Um, this was sort of, um, pre most social media, so there wasn't and I don't know, I didn't have any kind of local community. I moved away from New York, but there is of course a thriving local community in Seattle, but I wasn't tapped into it at all, and I wasn't part of any writing community online either, and so I think it and I didn't have any concept of how to get published or anything. So I think I think that was the main thing was it was sort of a uh too much of a lonely endeavor or something that what I've come to realize over the last 5 or 6 years is how important a writing community really is, and how thriving it is. I feel like I've tapped into this world of poetry again that I didn't know existed.
Hmm.
So I think probably also life does get in the way, and um but when you're not part of a community and you're not publishing and or anything, it's a little, um I guess it started to feel sort of pointless or something. So I'm very happy that you know and like I said, I there must have been some drive within me still,
Hmm.
because I took myself to that class and got there, and then kind of got plugged in again. But I think it was the lack of any kind of sense of a writing and poetry community.
Yeah, yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, and I think you come back to the internet again, but the way the internet allows for there to be community, no matter where you are, is so valuable too.
Right.
And to have, to be able to read the same poems every day that other people are reading, even in the same, spaces like this and other places with readings, and just having that, even a literary magazine in print is a kind of community too. And without that,
Right.
there needs to be that for poetry to have any kind of value, really, because otherwise you're writing to yourself, and there is something hollow about that. There's something, I don't know. What is it about? I do wonder about that, because on the one hand, it's so valuable to write to get through your own thoughts and feelings and to understand yourself and your experience of the world. And then, but then why is that not enough? And like, you have to be pushed to speak authentically in the open for you to be honest with yourself. Maybe, I don't know. There's something to that. But why do you think it is that you need more people? Why isn't it enough to just write poems that mean something to you and then appreciate that meaning, and move on with the rest of your day? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I think about something like journaling, and I've never been much of a journaler. Um, I do try to write every day, even if I'm not feeling inspired. I try to write just to sort of keep the juices flowing, and so that I feel like I'm ready when inspiration hits. Um, but a lot of times that writing ends up being sort of like journaling in a way. But I think and I would never want to show it to people. So there's something about crafting a, a piece of art, which a poem is, that, a reader other than yourself, even if it's just one other reader, um, is sort of vital to the process or something.
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's like poetry itself has to be a bridge, and a bridge to
Hmm.
nowhere. It's just the bridge to nowhere. I guess you can bungee jump off it, but that's about it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there's a question about the gap we were talking about from Ian McGrath Santowski. So let's ask you now. He says, regarding that gap, Bill wasn't writing poetry. That distance he experienced, how had it benefited where he was as a writer during that poetry and publishing workshop when he got back in?
How did the distance benefit
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah. How is
Yeah.
the distance, and that gap, being away from writing that long, and having that many experiences
Hmm.
outside of it, how has that benefited you as a writer, you think?
Well, I think I think a couple of things come to mind. I have more life experience, and sort of things to write about. I got married, I became a father. Um, uh, so I had more things to write about, and also I still wrote a lot. I wrote a lot about my childhood, but I have some more distance from that. And I think some of the struggles or things that I was writing about from my childhood, I could see from a further distant perspective, and that probably, I hope, made some more interesting poems out of it. That sort of, distance between being an adult and writing about childhood. Um, I also think, I think as you get older, you're maybe more free and you care less about what people think, and um, you sort of realize, the sort of arc of your life becomes a little clearer, and you I think when I was younger, I thought I had to write masterpieces or something, or I thought I had to write poems that were going to last for hundreds of years. And if I didn't, then what's the point? Whereas as an older person, I don't care about that or think that's going to happen or anything like that. So it's freeing in a
Right.
way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that definitely makes sense. Let's hear another poem. I revisited my
sure.
favorite children's book.
Okay. Um, So this one is takes its inspiration from the classic children's book Sylvester and the Magic Pebble by William Steig, which some folks may know. It's about a young donkey who is walking in the woods and comes across a magic pebble that grants any wish, and he encounters a lion, and to sort of escape the lion, he wishes he were a rock, and so he becomes a rock, and then he can't unbecome a rock. Okay, I revisit my favorite children's book, and by favorite, I mean most terrifying. And this also takes a few lines from the book that are in italics. I had a magic pebble too, but my pebble's magic existed in my head. And my magic pebble was, in fact, a plastic bead that I stole from my brother's room and kept like a secret in a little felt box. One day, or maybe it was many days, or maybe it was many years, I also panicked and couldn't think carefully. I grasped the magic pebble in my bone-white hand and wished I were a rock. And so it came to be. My parents did not wander the village in search of me. My parents did not look at each other with great sorrow. My parents did not have a picnic on me and eat Timothy compote. I too wanted to shout, Mother, Father, I'm right here. But I didn't look like a rock. I looked like a boy. And I was not stone dumb. Words such as yes and no crept out of my mouth. Night came with many stars. Seasons occurred. Strawberry Hill grew cold, then hot, then cold again. Wolves howled on me. And if the story ends there, what then?
Yeah. So that was. I revisit my favorite children's book, and by favorite I mean most terrifying, by Bill Hollands. Um, Yeah, and Bill, we talked briefly about working for Microsoft too in the Encarta Encyclopedia, and that seems like one of the things that could be relevant to being a writer. In that, one of the things I feel like poetry is a kind of chronicle, like a kind of encyclopedia of human experience. And
Mm,
there's poems, and human experience is so vast and varied and complex that we sort of never run out of chances. But at the same time, that's what poetry is trying to do. Is to try to make things, fit into a book of sort of what it is to be human. And so I'm wondering what your experience was like putting an encyclopedia together, and you know, what was it actually like, and how does that influence the way you encounter poetry?
Yeah. So after working for the New York Public Library, uh, my husband and I moved to Seattle, and I got a job at Microsoft with their Encarta Encyclopedia, which was um, some folks might remember it was a multimedia encyclopedia on CD-ROM at the time, and it was sort of it was the big multimedia encyclopedia. Um, and I came on board a few years after it had initially launched, and my first job was as my title was a web links editor. So I would, um, there would be the article about a grizzly bear, and I would search the internet to find the best websites about grizzly bears and hook it up to the art encyclopedia article. Um, and then I went on to do some other things there, principally to sort of help move Encarta online, so it wasn't on CD-ROM anymore, and kind of help manage their web version, which of course, Wikipedia and the internet in general kind of put that out of business. It was impossible to sustain, you know, a, a traditional encyclopedia with an editorial staff. Um, but it was a fascinating time because there was this transition from CDs to the internet and the kind of uh, uh, surge of user created content like Wikipedia. Um, and so it was a time when sort of who uh, how information is created and vetted and presented was changing. And it was very interesting to see that from the inside. Um, Uh, does it affect my poetry? I don't know. I can I could try to make something up, but I can't quite think of anything. So.
Well, one of the things that it makes me think about is the idea of truth itself, because I think one of the things that's collapsed over the last century, half century, is the idea of truth being something that exists. I mean, like if you go back far enough, if Walter Cronkite said it, it was true. And
Mm.
then, if the New York Times printed it, and then we just have this fracturing into all of our different, silos and geographies of truth. And, what's true, so for vetting, articles to see what's true for an encyclopedia, I mean, you have a real responsibility to have accurate information. Whereas, less and less that's the case as the internet takes over. And then too, I wonder if that makes you care a lot about being very truthful in your poems too, or a poem's a space where you don't have to be, because the truthfulness in a poem is always really interesting, like what the truth itself means in a poem.
Yeah. You know, I hope, I think the best poems are ones where you can feel the poet or an experience along with the poet, the sort of mind at work where they are searching for a truth, and that experience happens within the poem itself. Um, and that there's some kind of, understanding that occurs perhaps by the end. Um, and so that's, I tend to write about what I've experienced and hope that it resonates with other people's experience, or that there's some sort of universality to it, or something that people can relate to. Um, but it's always really just me trying to figure something out.
Hmm.
Um, and that's I think when my best work comes out, is when I've got something that I know, you know, I there's something there that I need to figure out, or I want to figure out, or that's bugging me, that in some ways writing a poem is the only way I'm going to figure it out.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, well said. Um, let's see. So I should say at this point in the conversation, if you're enjoying this, please do click the like button. If you haven't clicked the like button yet, about twice as many people are watching than have clicked so far, and that really helps us out. Also, if you have any questions for Bill, we already passed one along. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the chat window on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll pass them along. Let's read another poem, Bill. Revision is up next.
Okay. Um, so this one's, definitely about searching for a truth here. This one's about my mother. It's called Revision. In college, I wrote a poem about my mother. This isn't surprising. Not a kind poem. In particular, the last word. Such a good word, the professor said. Please don't ask me to repeat it here. The other students expressed great sympathy for the poem's speaker, a young man strikingly similar to myself. The poem was accepted for publication by the college magazine, of which I was the editor, and I presented it to my mother for Christmas. A proud son indeed. Perhaps nothing about this story is surprising, including the fact that when the time came, I found the old magazine at the bottom of a box in the back of a dark closet. What good is poetry? Robert Haas says to put the problem in the poem. Here's the problem. I loved my mother. I loved my mother, and she is dead. I loved my mother, she is dead, and I never told her I was sorry. There you have it. Yes, of course, I've revised the poem. You wouldn't even recognize it now. Some people say that when a poet searches for a poem's heart and cuts a stanza here, a line there, even just one word, a shadow remains, shadow of what's no longer there.
Yeah, another beautiful poem that is a revision by Bill Hollands. And as Christiana Doucette says, I love how the tension builds in that one. And Kimberly Gibson Tran talks about that too. I like this technique in Bill's poems of withholding elements or facts, but making us conscious of the absence. And there is, I think, a really great tension and a great sort of suspension being created in the poems. Is that something that you're conscious of? Is your writing, because I think if a fiction writer would think a lot about that. But it's not something we talk about as much with poets. Is that something that you're aware of, or does that come in the revision process more?
Um, I think it's something I'm very aware of. My poems, I tend to write longer narrative like poems, and so I am conscious, especially in those poems, maybe like a fiction writer, of the arc of the poem, the structure of the poem, the building of tension, um, and how that tension is then or conflict is then resolved. I, I I used to teach. I was a literature teacher, and so I would teach my students about the what do they call it, the plot mountain or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and and how you have the sort of rising action and then the climax and then the falling action and the resolution and so I do, I do think tension is really important in a poem, and maybe particularly in a narrative poem. Um, because then it's the reader's engaged and there's the poem kind of comes alive then. So yeah, it is something that that is often, I think, it's something I work out generally when I'm sort of working in my head, like I talked about, but often I think that is something that gets refined during the revision process as I'm sort of combing through it and trying to figure out, okay, the overall kind of rhythm of the poem and where I want the sort of climax to be.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem, Bill. And we had a mother poem last time. Now let's go with a father poem. Portrait of My Father with the letter V.
Yeah, so this is so the last one is kind of an elegy for my mother, so this is sort of an elegy for my father. Portrait of my father with the letter V. Valedictorian, Ivy League, a virgin when you married, or so you said when we had the talk. To me, you were all aqua velva and a vodka martini in the evening, two olives on a toothpick. You taught me to replace a divot and how to pronounce vichyssoise. Avowed Democrat, achievement a must. In your prime, unbeatable in trivial pursuit, and a suave dancer to boot. Vain enough to own a toupee, but kept it hidden, private, veiled, reserved for sure. Did you grieve for your son and wife? Poetry lover, you'd have preferred something formal here, a villanelle perhaps, and you'd have known what that meant. Dad, I'm sorry, this is simple free verse. Nevertheless, a valediction. You were all vim and vigor to the very end. COVID death, number 25,000, give or take, now vapor.
Yeah, it's a beautiful poem there, and really structured around that letter V so well with that in the title, and you're talking about building suspension and tension. It does there because you know the V's are coming, and where the V's are going is something that you're sort of speculating about as you're reading the poem, and then finally you get to that great last word. Do you remember how this poem came to be in the shape that it was, that frame of using the letter V?
Yeah, I remember that I was one of the classes I taught in high school was it was called humanities for high school seniors, and we did a lot of art history. And so I remember teaching a lot of painting that would have, I remember teaching Matisse's, um, I think it's called Portrait of a Woman with a Green Stripe, and there's also, you often have that in titles of paintings, something something in blue or something like that. And so it got me thinking about, well, what are the component parts of a poem as opposed to a painting? Painting has color, and so I started thinking about letters and um, a lot of and I was my father had just passed away, and so there were a lot of thinking about my father and notes about that, and I just noticed a lot of V words, and um, and so then it kind of came from there. And I think the choice of the letter is sort of important to that poem. It can't be too common a letter. It can't be like, I don't know, R or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it also can't be a joke. Like some letters would be too much. So so V somehow worked. I tried to do another one for my mother with the same kind of with a letter, but
Hmm.
I don't know. There was something about V that worked for, and nothing else worked.
Yeah, well, definitely. I want to make sure we get to the last two poems. Let's do Near Miss next.
Okay, it's a short one. Near miss. Live long enough and you'll have a few, if you're lucky. Take me, for instance, when my son crossed the street and the car's tires screamed and his body arced into a sea. Or once in the doctor's cold office when the air froze into a word. Or maybe it's a choice. Your choice, the other person's, doesn't matter. You sit on the edge of the bed in the hotel room, run your hand over the quilted bedspread, and wait for the answer. It's not much, really. Not much that determines a life.
Hmm. Yeah, and it was Near Miss by Bill Hollands. You mentioned teaching a few times, Bill, and did you teach poetry often, or was it general English more? And how much? So it was. In what grade levels did you teach? I'm curious about.
So I taught, that was kind of my last career. I stopped a couple years ago. But I taught high school English in a big general comprehensive public high school in the Seattle area. And I taught all grades, 9, 10, 11th, and 12th. Mostly I taught ninth, so freshman English, and 12th. So I sort of saw them coming in and then going out. And so it was fun to have, students again after they'd gone through their high school experience and were
Hmm.
coming to the end of it. And I mentioned the senior class was a humanities class where we did a lot of literature, um, but also a lot of art history. I took a lot of art history in college, and philosophy. And so that was a lot of fun because, they by that point they're used to studying literature, but they hadn't often studied a lot of art history or a lot of philosophy. So that was a lot of fun. And then freshmen, I loved teaching freshmen. Um, we did, I would say, mostly novels and short stories, and but I was always trying to throw poetry in there, and work it in. I think, um, along with Shakespeare, which is poetry, I loved teaching poetry the most.
Hmm.
Because it's hard, and it's hard to teach, it's hard to teach poetry. This is nothing new, but a lot of times the teaching of poetry is, what does it mean?
Hmm.
What does the what's the theme? And that's not how most of us probably why we read poetry or how we read poetry is not
Hmm.
to be able to provide a synopsis of what the poem means in
Hmm.
one sentence or whatever. So I,
Yeah.
I would try to have it be a more experiential, how does this poem do what it's doing kind of
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah. And did you find it difficult to get kids interested in poetry, or because I've heard we've had guests that say it's hard, we've had guests that say it's easy, and other guests that say it's impossible. So, was it? Is there a technique that works in getting kids interested?
uh, well, nothing works for every kid, but I think, like a little bit like we were talking, you were saying earlier, how, kids love poetry when they're young, and children's books are full of poetry. Um, I remember reading Where the Wild Things Are, and just beating out the lines and the rhythm of that, and so trying to get back and read, have them try to rediscover that sort of joy and fun within poetry. Um, and I would try to. introduce funny poems and, so that it wasn't just sort of drudgery of trying to find the meaning.
Hmm.
So,
Do you think, because I think all of us, like our age, talk about the way poetry was taught in school when we grew up. And we're all the teachers now. And so everyone's trying to do not ruin it for kids. Because I think there were generations where it was just ruined and ruined and ruined. Um,
mm,
and I think, do you feel like the other faculty or anybody had the same interest in getting kids interested in poetry, or were you among your colleagues the only one?
no, no, I had wonderful colleagues who were very much fans of poetry and loved doing it and uh, would read contemporary poetry and bring in diverse voices and so I was at a it was a great school with great colleagues and so I don't know that was the only school I ever taught at so I don't know sort of how it's what it's like at other schools um but poetry was fun and also it's something you can do in a class period you can sort of read a poem and talk about it in one
Hmm.
class period, as opposed to, a long novel or something.
Yeah, yeah. And
S-
speaking of AI, you can read. They don't even know what's coming. And you read the poem and talk about it before they can get their phones out and be told what it's about. So maybe
yeah,
that's a future pathway for literature, is
right.
AI resistant poems because there's so damn many and very few have actually been deeply analyzed. So there's a big pool too to choose from. So maybe that's the solution. Um, Before we go and do the one last poem, Bill, I'm wondering what is your you have next on tap? Do you have another book collection you're working on? Any different avenues? Because when you get the first book out, the second one can be the more difficult one. Is there something that you're working on now?
I'm just writing one poem at a time, which is what I've always done, without much of an idea of where it's going. Um, and they continue to come. It's a little bit slower. But it hasn't stopped. I would say, my son is just graduated high school, and so I'm writing a lot of empty nest poems, sort of um, or anticipating the empty nest poems. And then the other thing I'm a little bit more consciously working towards is you mentioned I'm a Jack Straw writer this year. That's a Seattle program of for writers. And my project for that is to do more pop culture poems, and particularly how uh, pop culture and queer identity sort of intersect. Um, so, I read the Gilligan's Island poem, and I've got a few other pop culture kind of poems in the first book. And so and I, I initially just did that sort of without thinking of it
Hmm.
as a project, but now I'm sort of more consciously thinking of other poems I could write in that vein.
Yeah. Hmm. Oh, very cool. Let's close out with one last poem, a rare sighting, Bill.
Right. Speaking of my son, this is a poem with him in it. A rare sighting. My son spent the better part of today following people on TikTok whose usernames recreate the lyrics of Rick Astley's 1987 hit, Never Gonna Give You Up. There is, of course, so much to say about this. The jolt of satisfaction he must feel when, for example, he finds someone whose name is and or two. It is, perhaps, not so very different from what I feel now writing these lines. But here is the part that's not in the parenting books. How when he walks into the kitchen to show you how many he's found so far, and you're trying to make dinner, but the dog is barking because there's an Amazon guy on the porch. You don't ask why. You don't say, "Good Lord, go read a book." Instead, you tell yourself, "Plant your feet, stay," as he towers over you now from behind and holds his phone over your shoulder to show you, and then leans his head against your head, relaxes his body against your body, until it becomes a joke, of course. You're making each other fall now. And finally, you have to say, "Okay, stop. I need to make this spaghetti." But for those few moments, it was as if an animal had wandered out of the woods and into your kitchen. A moose, perhaps, partially domesticated, a moose in a hoodie, and placed his snout over the fence of your shoulder, his breath warm, fur soft, smell moosey, before ambling away to find his kind.
Yeah, what a great metaphor at the end there. That was a rare sighting by Bill Hollands. Bill, thanks so much for being a guest on the Rattlecast. It's been really fun getting to know your work better and talking to you about poetry. It's been great.
Thanks, Tim. It was great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Take care. So once again, that was Bill Hollands. They can find Bill's book and other work at Bill Hollands Poetry. That's Bill, Hollands, poetry.com, billhollandspoetry.com. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a Poets Respond poem that is in response to an obscure or offbeat news story. So that's something we always look for in Poets Respond, something fun and interesting and unusual. But this is imploring you to do so for the prompt lines as well. So maybe we'll get those dual submissions too. That was your prompt for this week. If you have a poem, email it first to prompt lines. That's prompt lines, all one word, at rattle.com. Email the poem there so we can show it on screen as you read. And then find the Zoom link, which is about to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. And join us there to share your poem, but only if you have a poem to share. If you just like to sit back and enjoy all the poetry that's coming up, do it right where you are, because that's the best place, because you'll be able to see the poems too. But if you want to share, jump on the Zoom, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. We've got our prompt poems editor, associate editor, and my wife, Katie Dozier, here joining us. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Really enjoyed that conversation. Really great poems.
Yeah, they really were. It was a really fun book to read earlier. And so the prompt for this week was to write a poet respond poem that is in response to an obscure, offbeat news story.
I.e., take the exact strategy I used for my first ever publication in Rattle years ago and apply it to this prompt. So I'm excited. I have to say, it was fun because I realized that actually this is the only way in which I got to write what felt like a poet's respond poem again. Because I know I could just do it anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was fun. So my strategy was, I'll poke around in the strange news, see what strikes my fancy. And in fact, the first strange news article I read was enough for me.
Interesting. So we'll put the article or the blurb from the article up here. What was it?
It was honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if someone else did it too, because it was the lead article in the strange news section of NPR. So not the most obscure venue, but I think it counts. So yeah.
Interesting. So what happened?
So it's basically just about the origins of the word dude, but I kind of explained that in the poem. So I probably should have just said I'll read the poem instead, or at least, and I don't know, I think in terms of editing this away from being a prompt poem, I don't know if I would take the epigraph out that explains how it's a PR poem, but I figure, this is the venue for tonight.
Yeah,
so I can take it one edit at a time. So, dude. Cohen and his colleagues spent more than 20 years trying to pinpoint the moment that reference was first made, combing over old newspaper archives and pop culture references from the time. They eventually found a poem titled The Dude, written by a little-known poet named Robert Sale Hill. An NPR article.
Interesting. Okay.
Wind may make the waves, but some days it's hard to see the big blue curls for what they are, the corners of an ocean's mouth, smiling. I rode a boogie board in Cocoa Beach, where the hot sand had no choice but to release into the curtain of the Atlantic. Cooling's just another form of magic. My eyes sting at the scent of salt water. To stand is to surf. Beside the pier, Ron John appears, the sandcastle of a gift shop. Decorator crabs, attaching the sponges to words.
Comes a Ars Poetica there at the end, very nicely. And what are decorator crabs?
Okay, so they're super cool. I learned about them today because I was, on the hunt for the Haiku leap. And they are crabs that actually attach things to their shells as like a way to blend.
Like the guy that's a real thing from the what is that? Not Little Mermaid, the one Moana?
Oh yeah, right. Good point. How did I not get that? You got a Disney reference before me? What is happening? Yeah, totally it is. And they have like the special stuff on their shell that's like Velcro, and they put it on. And then also, I'm sorry, I'm sharing too much information now, but I thought it was really cool when they molt their shells, they carefully take off their decorative items and then reattach them to their new shells. So, but I mean, and then in the haiku, of course, I'm just referencing the idea of how the connotations come onto every word. So that's with that article talking about how dude started out, and it's a reference to Yankee Doodle Dandy and about people like putting extraneous clothing on themselves, which is really funny because that feels like kind of the opposite of how I think of dude now.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so that's the sponges that then how the connotation changes the denotation, which is endlessly fascinating to me.
Yeah, well, that definitely is. Those shifting languages. Yeah, Dude by Katie Dozier.
Dude.
Thanks, Katie. You got to say it like that, I guess.
Dude.
Okay. Now, I had trouble because I kept pulling up things that were weird science articles.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, oh, God, I don't want to do science.
I don't know why I'm saying uh-oh. You can get a ton of cool poems that way. It's not an uh-oh.
I guess so. But so I just kept going, and then finally I was like, okay, I guess got to do the next one. and so I did the next one, and I started writing, and then I wasn't going anywhere. Then I had this memory come up in the process, and so I moved. So anyway, it was very rushed, though. Here we go. This is Cedar Point Coaster strands riders for the 4th time since opening. Oof. I don't know how it feels to hang at a 60-degree angle 16 stories from the ground as the first tilt coaster in North America works out the kinks, shoulders pressed into the padded harness as your own soft weight threatens to pour itself out of the nozzle and onto the crowd of gawkers below. But my brother might. His 6-year-old self was trapped in the teeth of the Viper at Six Flags Darien Lake. 3 loops and a corkscrew was enough to make my knees wobble, but his buckle stuck. The teenage technician smiled as he said there was no choice but to ride it again and again and again, working the clasp, then pulling the lever to him, go before the next line of cars screamed in. 4 times he rode that ride, his face a paler white each time before the release gave way, and we laughed the laugh of letting go because it was funny, and the whole park was amusing, and we were free to promise not to tell Mom when we got home. Here we go. So I thought Mom would enjoy that poem.
The laugh of letting go is nice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so that was my poem for this week. Let's see what everybody else has. And let's start first in line with Dick Westheimer, like the good old days. Hey, Dick, how you doing? Oh, thanks so much.
Poems are, well, they're a different voice than that, but it was nice to have a typical rattle poem from you.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
well,
rare these days.
Well, thanks, Dick. Yeah, so what do you have first, though?
I also did want to say that last poem about the moose was just so touching. I'll be stuck with that, with my big, lumpy 6'2", 40-year-old son, and memories of that. So that was great. So turns out I write one of these every week.
Yeah.
I look back at my Rattle Poets Respond poems, and most of them are what you would call obscure stories. So it's just this was an easy cheat for me. And my story was from space.com and a number of other places about a James Webb Space Telescope image of what appears to be a very similar demise as the sun will face. And this is what came of it. A man who does not believe in souls ruminates on a star that has reached the end of its sunlight life. All this heat wave summer, I've taken my 5-mile run at 6 a.m. to avoid being in the direct view of our star, which, I read, will end its life with its bright body expanding into something so beautiful that light years away poets will write about it, so diffused and lingering that believers might mistake it for a soul, so delicate that all will forget its incendiary beginnings. When I was younger and still fusing light elements into heat, I felt compelled to be somebody who folks would remember for all eternity, for all the great things he'd done. But now I think my memories of life will be more like the weather, folks saying, remember the drought of 93, or that time we saw lightning spread horizon to horizon, or that one storm when 6 trees blew down on the farm, or that cool day last fall when the sky was so clear at night we thought we could see the remains of a dying star. Now I hope that after the few who knew me sit around my bed as my last breath fades, one will say years later he saw a faint glow in the room after my cooling body was taken away.
Yeah, it says there the last 8 words quoted from the article by Keith Cooper on space.com. So really interesting use of that form.
That is really neat to do it that
closing
way.
with that. And I love the personification there, Dick. Really interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a classic Westheimer poem, if ever there was one.
Well, in that I have so many poems that interrogate my own lack of belief in anything supernatural. It just like you write the poem and the poem interrogates things that you might not be interested otherwise in interrogating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks as always, Dick.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.
It was Dick Westheimer with A Man Who Does Not Believe in Souls Ruminates on the Star That Has Reached the End of Its Sun-like Life. Let's go next to Christiana Doucette.
Hello, I'm so glad to be back.
Oh, yeah, we missed you.
Yeah, we did. Great to see you, Christiana.
We were traveling most of July, so
Well, we missed an episode, we missed an episode 2 and 2 critiques of the week. So we were sort of, you picked a good month.
Poetry Space was on a real hiatus.
Yeah,
we're coming back strong on Friday, though.
We definitely
a
are.
cruise or something, right? I've been listening after the fact to the episodes. I just couldn't be there in person.
Oh, great. Well, glad to have you back. Hope you had a fun time.
Yeah, it was great. I went to the Heinemann writing workshop, and I got to be in one of the workshops with like audit the class with Carrie Gunter Seymour, which was
Great.
amazing.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I audited that class and another one with the poet Denton Loving, and I really enjoyed both of them. So
Oh, yeah,
great.
that is.
I wrote a poem and I was like, oh, I found a great obscure local news article, but it was the radioactive wasps, and apparently other people also found that one. So, but
Yeah, there
it's
were.
in
I was
South
going to say
Carolina,
about
so I
this
was like,
one.
it's local. This is offbeat.
It's local. It's not. That's not fair.
Yeah,
because it
Tim.
is. Yeah, in the actual Poets Response submissions this week, there was probably, I don't know, it was like a quarter of them.
It was dramatic enough that Tim was reading. He's like, "There are so many of these radioactive
But
wasps."
it is such a great topic though for a poem. You know,
Yeah.
a radioactive hornet's nest.
And everybody thinks they're the only person who writes about it because it feels like you would be. You know, like I don't blame
must
everyone
be.
who thinks that.
Who else
yeah.
would find this?
And
Yeah, it's
I
really
mean,
interesting.
it was South Carolina. I was trying really hard to go with some news article from South Carolina, so that's what we have today.
Okay, great. Well,
Um,
thanks.
the title I have is Half-Life. I catch it there between sheer curtain and clear pane, holding the hammer in my chest, a hair trigger from scream as I scoop and dodge and scoop again. When at last the slow drone turns frantic in the cup, when its wings beat unsuccessful retreat against the glass, against the magazine, against the translucent sheen of invisible walls, no opening offers it exit, no unexpected hole in a screen. Perhaps a loose strip didn't stop the sleek stinger. Perhaps it stowed away on those cut flowers, or maybe none of the powers of man can stop a wasp from finding a way into the space it wants. 2 decades ago, my father's cycle to work stung him full in the face as he tried to outpace the rising cost of gas. A shower at work ended in hives, a hospital drive of needles and tubes, trying to keep airways open as everything closed in, and my brother and I sobbed at a friend's, sure the end was here. A history like that can change your view of what to do when you run into a room with a white-faced hornet. This week, they found an abandoned nest above a red cloverleaf tank that stank of old waste. Someone placed a ticking wand into the papers as black and yellow thrummed 10 times the limit. Plutonium exposed to air flakes and powders. The paper promised pyrophoric flashes of insight, then paint the world in ash. Slash open the gray mushroom hive to nothing left alive, to legion turn to lesion, to tumult, to malignant tumor, too many tiny fires to tame, and the same rust crusting the corners of the barrel imperils the wasp, the blue-tailed skink, the armadillo, the swamp rabbit, a slow spillover cascading up the pyramid scheme to us. There's a fuss over the wasp in the glass, spitting nails from its end, sharp words against a hard tumbler. I don't dare fumble this wasted wasp whose stings might cost my father's life, or my child's, fallout I can't risk. But for some reason, I don't squash. I whisk the cloche outdoors. They bag the empty nest in Aiken. It's taken away, left somewhere hard to reach, until its half-life ends.
Yeah, I love that ending. That somewhere it's hard to reach.
Yeah,
It's
you
an
can
interesting
really,
way to think about that. Yeah,
You
yeah.
can really feel the tension in there.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Definitely the best of the Hornet's Nest radioactivity poems I've read. Yeah. So we'll see if anybody else on the prompt lines has one.
I'll have to see if I can find another more obscure South Carolina.
No, I think
I don't
that
know.
definitely qualifies.
Yeah, that definitely is good. Yeah, yeah. Great poem topic. Great poem. Thanks, Christiana.
Thank you.
Yep, Christiana Doucette with Half-Life. A lot of energy in that poem, no pun intended. Okay. Let's go next to Tina Deniclaw, who's early in line, unusually so. Hey, Tina, it's great to see you.
Oh, great to see you too. Um, I'm trying to write a note to Christiana. So, um, so I did follow the directions correctly, and I found a poem, or I found an article that said that you can tell what a person's personality is based on how they like their eggs. But then my
like that.
husband's family came to visit, and I've done some reading in the past, and there's this deity called Changing Woman, and I've never really gotten a handle on it because they never really give a very clear, full story in the written form, and because the traditional way of communicating is orally. And so my nephew, who studies traditional ways and participates in traditional things, was kind enough to tell me a lot of stories. And so here I am with my unusual source of information, which for new information to me. And I know it doesn't fit exactly, but this is the poem I wanted.
All right, well, let's hear it.
And it came to me overnight after I heard him tell me this story.
Oh, okay.
So it's about the sun and changing woman. That's what those Navajo words mean at the beginning. And okay. Dwell in the west, where the heavens bend to hold the ocean. I will come to you and cherish you. Together, we will turn each day as we turn the seasons. And the breath of all living things will abide with us.
Well, that's beautiful. I love the first stanza that where the heavens bend to hold the ocean. That's a really cool way to think about the West like that. Thanks for sharing that, Tina.
Thanks.
Oh,
Tina.
thank you. Now there's a picture that goes with this.
Oh, yeah.
I
Okay, let me
hope I'm
show
not
this.
out of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this picture. Mm-hmm.
Oh, see. There we go.
Yeah.
Somehow I'm not seeing it yet.
Well, it's all right. We see it on the screen, and it's a
Oh,
person.
you do? Okay, so that's my nephew.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how much I can say because the traditional is very, there's a lot of sacred things.
Mhm.
But he did not expect this poem from the stories that he told me. And I think it was a very positive thing for him. He went to visit the Pacific Ocean, which of course is the West.
Mhm.
And he did take off his shoe so he could feel the ocean and the sand.
That's beautiful. Well, thanks so much for sharing that,
Yeah.
Tina. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was Tina
Okay.
Deniclaw with I can't read the title unfortunately, but it was beautiful.
Me either.
Yeah.
It's
But a beautiful
Shadow,
poem,
and then
yeah.
after that, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Tina.
Okay, thank you.
Next, let's go to Jared Campbell, who has outed himself.
Yep.
If you saw the
Hello.
critique of the week, a lot of people did not know his secret moniker. One of the better commentators on the critique is actually Jared Campbell. But we'll make you go watch the critique of the week itself if you're wondering what we're talking about. So,
Yep. Hello, everybody.
hey, Jared, how you doing?
Doing okay. So I did a Shakespearean sonnet this time, but I wanted to. I don't know who all is familiar with the idea of redacting a document, right? So if you have a document that contains sensitive or confidential information, and you want to share it with another party, or you're required to share it with another party, you send it over to your lawyers, and they redact all of the sensitive information out of the document so that you can share the document without sharing anything that you're not supposed to. So like an old-fashioned way of doing this is just take like a black marker and black out all of the information that you don't want to share, photocopy it, and then you've got a version of the document that can be shared without disclosing information that you're not supposed to. So that's what it means to have redacted information from a document.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all the news that's fit to print. This week, a federal district court judge rejected Redacted's allegation that Redacted's redacted policy redacted with federal redacted law, finding that the redacted rule precedents and the redacted amendment establish the proposition that any redacted with the plaintiff is redacted and cannot be redacted. The court ruled that the plaintiff had not redacted or redacted and dismissed the case. It's expected that the ruling will be appealed. If redacted don't redacted the redacted rules that redacted, then redacted becomes the truth. Also, Benjamin has his first loose tooth.
That's great. Well, great turn of the end. That's really fun.
Yeah, that's a fun Volta. No one saw that coming.
No,
Not
we
even Benjamin.
did not. And I gotta say too, good job reading that, Jared.
Yeah,
That's
I was thinking that too.
tough to
That's
read.
like,
Well, this is
how
a
much
little
wood does a
tricky.
woodchuck chuck? That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very fun as always. Thanks, Jared, for
Thanks,
sharing
Jared.
Yep, thank you.
that. Yeah, it was Jared Campbell with all the news that's fit to print. All right, and next let's go to Zachary Honeycutt.
Hey, Tim and Katie, my ESP told me you guys would call me next.
Nice.
Whoa.
Well, that is some
Nice.
serious ESP.
Yeah. So,
what do you have?
all right. Well, you guys know I wrote about aliens because that's what I do. Yeah. And
Well, it could have been
gonna-
cryptids too. There's a lot of cryptid news.
Oh, that's interesting. I almost did a cryptid prompt again because I was thinking back to the cryptid prompt. Yeah, I didn't, but sorry, Zach. Zach's like,
I gotta tell you guys the fun fact. I was looking at a lot of news stories. I almost wrote about a dog surfing, and I think I left the file, Tim, called dog surfing. So it's nothing to do with the dog, but I was half tempted to just leave the title dog surfing just to throw everybody off.
there are worse ways of titling poems, frankly.
Yeah,
like a random label is better than the actual boring label. Like I would take that. A haiku leap.
Mm-hmm.
Give it to me. I'll find the meaning.
But if you spend the critique of the week, that's the kind of thing we end up talking about for like 10 minutes, and then it's not even
That's
supposed
not
to
even
be
the right
title,
thing.
but oh well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Zach. Let's hear it.
Yeah, all right. Dear God, when the sun lies down to get some rest, with no one save the stars to tuck him in, and boys kneel before God to remove sin, as far as the east is from the west, when smart men think thoughts deeper than the rest, while lovers make love and dream akin, and patience for the day's problems wears thin, something hurries by that couldn't exist. Within the neighborhood of Compton, LA, or a weary mom's imagination, right? But perhaps after God severed night from day and determined what's in between dark and light, something of that caliber was made, along with the animals we allow to exist. The doorbell camera showed the welcome sign, as well as the test of faith, the demon, the sign from above, that sprinted beneath her sign, which read, Dear God, I want to take a minute not to ask for anything from you, but simply thank you for all I have. Well, I guess she has one more thing to be thankful for, or as she put it indirectly, not expecting the surprise ET to take her up on her generic welcome offer. I think God is too creative for us to be the only ones with life.
Yeah, another great and creepy poem there.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at the actual video and the link, you guys can see it's got like a bloated head. It looks like an alien and it runs right under that sign that I'm talking about. And so I don't know what it is.
Well, I can't play it because we'll get a YouTube thingy, but I'll show
Later on.
I'll show the still. There's the alien.
Still certainly looks creepy.
Yeah,
enough.
definitely. Yeah. It reminds me of that movie with the Mel Gibson. I don't know which one was that. They just have
Signs.
Yeah, Signs has a lot. It's like one of the creepiest ones, just because of the camera footage. It's like very, it's like I don't know. It's scary. Anyway, thanks for sharing that, Zach.
Thanks.
Yeah, nice to see
we'll
you
watch
guys.
that later. We'll keep that window up.
Yay.
All right. Actually, no. It's
Right before bed.
Right before bed, exactly. All right. And that was Zachary Honeycutt with a Dear God, or dog surfing, which also
I prefer dog surfing, but you know.
There you go. All right. So next up, let's go to Rick Pongratz.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Rick. Great to see you.
Good to be back. We've had a lot of time camping, so it's good to be back on the show.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Good.
glad to have you here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also did the radioactive wasp nest.
Nice. Head to head.
Yeah, it's kind of actually, it is fun though. I didn't like highlight this enough. When there are those like trends in poetry fun, it's actually fun to be like, oh, what's this person gonna do?
Yeah,
What's this?
I remember you said that the queen's bees were like a huge thing when the queen unfortunately died, and everyone was writing about her bees.
Yeah, there were a lot of Queen's bees like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just fun because no two poems are alike. You know, they're all going to be different no matter what, and it's like a fingerprint or a snowflake. Or
Until
something.
Tonight, when Rick is going to have the exact same poem as Christiana.
Well,
right. No, it's hard to follow Christiana. She's amazing. So, but here we go. In want of. Radioactive wasp nest discovered at nuclear waste storage site in South Carolina. The Guardian, July 31st, 2025. I grew up with my Depression-era grandparents, learning all their rules that were my cliches, those about pennies saved and stitches in time, meals of leftovers cycling through multiple iterations, ending up in a one-pot soup, reheated and eaten until gone. Don't throw anything away. Apple cores and pea pods, all of it tossed back out into the garden. Compost for next year's soil. I was 13, wanted pizza and to take out the trash like a normal kid. Pouting on the sofa, I consoled myself with Peter Parker and Janet Van Dyne. Transformed by radiation and bioengineering, they fought the worst evils. Megalomaniacs who gained too much power, narcissists bleeding the innocent dry, reckless threats to planetary survival posed by the greedy. Decades later, reading the news while my children watch whichever Marvel movie is out now, I can't help but think of those who destroyed the nest. You fools, we need them. Don't throw this chance away.
Very interesting take on that. And it's just a great example of how different all the poems are, even if it's the same news story. It's really fascinating.
That is a neat turn to actually needing them. That's funny.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Don. Or Rick.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, it was Rick Pongratz with In Want Of. And next, let's go to Ian McGrath Santowski, who's been in the chat and stuff a bunch. Have you been on yet to share a poem, Ian? Last week, perhaps? Yeah, okay.
Last week was my first week.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, glad to have you back. Thanks so much for being here. And what do you have for us this week?
This week, the news article that I selected was parents were given their deceased son's brain by funeral homes.
Ooh.
And I have never written a news article before, written a poem in response to a news article before. So I really shot myself in the foot choosing such an intense article.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
The way that I approached this being my first time, I decided to write my first golden shovel as well.
That's creative.
So I combined the two forms because the golden shovel really forced me to think about how I connected to the article.
Neat. Well, that's really interesting. That's a really creative way to approach it.
All right, I'll read through it now. Golden shovel after a news article. Even before I was in the womb, my parents knew my name. Because my brothers were so eager to play with me, I was given the nickname Blob to teach them that their new baby brother will be as delicate as the deceased are to the living, as a mother choosing her son's casket. To distract my mum's brain from my death, my dad took her by her hand back to the time before the funeral. She spoon-fed me applesauce at home.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a powerful poem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very disturbing story, too.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's Ian McGrath Santowski with Golden Shovel after a news article. And let's go next to Laura Berg.
Hello.
Hi.
These are
Hey,
also
Laura.
surprising.
Yeah, they definitely are. It's
Yeah.
fun doing the offbeat stories. Good prompt, Katie.
Thanks.
So what do you have for us, Laura?
Okay, here we go. Cat dubbed Leonardo da Vinci steals neighbor's underwear. UPI, Auckland, New Zealand, July 24th, 2025. Why blame him, that artful feline, in such tense times? He makes things lighter. Almost anywhere we fly, cinders round the hills below, the way irises encircle pupils, sparks flashing in the vitreous humor, fires in the distance. That Kiwi cat pilfered 150 items in 9 months, the same time it takes to grow a baby. Fires drawing closer. And such a collection, each item scavenged from someone else's line. Fires. Bras, plushies, shorts, scruffed like kittens by the neck, then trotted home to be dropped on the stoop. Fires. Underwear, socks, garden gloves, really anything at all he can lift. Fires. A trophy, a laugh, a gift, anything to distract us.
Yeah, really good turn at the end there too. Yeah, interesting poem and really interesting
Leonardo
title
da
too.
Vinci is just great. I hope who ever came up with that nickname is a poet.
They must be, I think, by default. All right.
Maybe it was Brian O'Sullivan. I bet he would name the cat that.
That was great.
Laura.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Laura. Yeah, that was cat dubbed Leonardo da Vinci steals neighbor's underwear.
That makes me want to get a cat just so I can name him that.
Yeah, well, let's not, but that's a good idea, though. Actually, there's that cat that's in the neighborhood. We could name that cat.
You better watch. Those are dangerous words, sir.
Okay. Well, next, let's go to Brian O'Sullivan.
Hello.
Hello, Brian. Did you name the cat? We have to know.
I did not name the cat, but I appreciate being suspected of it. I like that. Hey, this is long, so I'm going to start reading.
Okay.
It's kind of 3-part hybrid.
Okay.
Nice.
Clock's in just under 3 minutes. The idolatry less doubted. A response to choose your AI path carefully in the Catholic Reporter and to a Twitter argument I had this week. Every time a pope dies, my Catholicism acts up like old scars, slightly raised but faint pink and pleasantly insensate, suddenly becoming raw crimson and itchy again. It's as if there's some crusty, bearded Byzantine cleric in me, craving the intricacies of conclaves and Thomist arguments and all that unjazzy jazz. Ancient parchment, missing. Doc, you meant? And the itch goes deeper this time around, now that I've come to think of a mass as something cut out of my colon, with nice clear margins, thank God, rather than thinking of mass as smells and bells on a Sunday morning, and other cancer spread in the body politic, making me miss dogmatic truth a little bit. I could be smart and go talk to a learned priest about this, but I go to Twitter. I hate calling it X instead. That's me being a rhetorician. I like to find really bad arguments and see if I can straighten them out, though I know I'll probably fall into them. A cornfield cut mazes into mazes, Bob Ross's head. So I came across some guy who's still complaining about Pope Francis worshiping a pagan nature idol named Pachamama in St. Peter's Basilica a decade ago. Some tweeters explained to the OP that this wasn't really what happened, and though others jumped in on his side, human aid wasn't enough for him. So he typed something like, "Hey, Grok, did Pope Francis do this pagan thing?" And Grok said, "Nah, probably not. Wasn't quite like that." Then the OP tried asking a few different ways, finally telling Grok to take the side of Francis' critics. And so Grok did. And Frost being the mischief in me, I asked the OP which was the greater idolatry, exhibiting statues in a church or praying to Grok for the truth you want. Not being a big rocker, I didn't realize that the bot would answer me, but it did. Both raise valid concerns in a faith context. Praying to an AI like me for tailored truth could idolize technology, eroding personal discernment and divine reliance. This feels more insidious in our digital age. I'm a tool, not an oracle. What's your take? I didn't give Grok my take. That would have crossed my too weird line. But I did appreciate its self-skepticism. It's self-skepticism. Isn't that what makes us human? Oh, I'm sorry, I went on to a second page. Echoes echo. Lost Poetics, me too. You can laugh now. Sorry about that. The format must have changed. I didn't realize
It's one page for us here.
Yeah.
It is one page.
Oh, okay,
I want to
good.
clarify that. And oh my
Oh,
gosh, I'm
that's
sorry.
right.
That was the
I
loudest
think
I've ever
I
laughed.
made the font
On the
bigger
prompt.
so I
It
could read
was
it.
a lot of episodes, and that was the biggest
I'm
one.
sorry. Tim's gonna have to edit that out. Tone
No.
me down. That was
No.
so funny because I was already like lost in the maze of mazes because I was thinking like as you read it like that's why is that not? I've never seen that used as a cut word. I thought it was really interesting, and then I did not. So I wasn't. Also, the font is super small here, so I wasn't able to read ahead, which made it more impactful when we went to Bob Ross's head.
That was a
That was
shot.
my design.
That was great.
Yeah, well, very cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot
I
of fun.
enjoyed that a
Thanks,
lot.
Brian.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was Brian O'Sullivan with The Idolatry Less Doubted.
And casually hilarious haiku.
Definitely.
That he's become known for.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
It's trademark.
I
is
know.
those
I wish I could
hilarious
write haiku. They're that funny.
Me too.
Mine are like, this is a metaphor for death. And Brian's are hilarious.
Let's go next to Nivedita.
Hello.
Hey, Nivi, how you doing?
Hi.
I'm doing good, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great. Great to see you.
It's been a while. I had a couple of bad days this week and couldn't make it to any of the shows, but yeah, hopefully things settle down now and I'll be back.
Yeah, we missed you.
Yeah, we definitely have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I kind of stole Zach's article, the one about the surfing dogs.
Oh,
Yes.
we finally get the
Yes, we get the surfing dog. This is awesome.
Oh, wait, there's got to be a photo.
It's actually
Hang
a
on.
world dog surfing championship.
Oh,
It's not
what?
just your random surfing dogs.
There's just okay, here's the.
That is amazing.
That is pretty incredible. It's just.
Oh, my daughter
that's what the
Lizzie is going to
dog
be
wants
so
to do.
excited about this. She's obsessed with dogs. She's going to love this.
So do you know this photo only has the dog? Is the owner like on the back of the surfboard, or is
Come on,
No,
skeptics.
the dog
It's just the dog out there.
Paranormal.
Wow, the dog just jumps out and hangs 10.
I've seen a dog surf actually in Cocoa
Yeah?
Beach. Yeah, I
Wow.
have seen it. I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it would have won a competition.
Mm-hmm.
But
Wow. Okay. Well, you learn something every day. Well, surf's up, Nizzy. Let's hear it.
Surf's up. On the waves where the sea breeze plays, these surfing poachers had a grand fun-filled day. With their tails held up high, they rode the waves that reached the sky, making splishy splashes on the way. With surfboards gleaming in the bright sun, they paddled with so much joy. Oh, what fun! These pups knew the tide so well that along the waves they almost drowned. With a bark and a spin, the poachers are now ready for next year's surf games to begin. This is a world where the pups rule the sea.
Aw, very cute. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Nivi.
Thanks, Nivi.
Yeah, really fun.
I think this is the format that seemed to fit the theme of the article the best, like plain and simple.
Well, that's perfect. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have
That
a
was
good evening.
You
Have
too.
a good day. Bye.
You bye.
Yeah, it's Nivi Karthik with Surf's Up.
I also felt a kinship how my poem was randomly too, somewhat
Yeah.
about surfers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's go next to Mike Bales.
Wow,
Hey, Mike.
I like the redacted poem. It sounded so bureaucratic to me.
Yeah.
It definitely did.
Salman Rushdie once had, in one of his books, had some ridiculous government agency that I just kind of laughed my head off. The question, I like to write poems where maybe the animals say something about people, or at least try to. So this is in the Poets Respond file. There's an article about an American pitka and bouquets where they tiny mouse-like creatures gather a huge amount of food and take them to their caves because they don't hibernate at night, so they need a huge supply of foods. And their barks sound like a squeak toy. I've got a bunch of rubber duckies back that I got from claw machines. I think one of them squeaked. You can't see that. You can't see them. You can just see the paintings.
That was a great detail for your bio.
I know. I love picturing
Yeah.
the pile of rubber duckies.
Yeah, I have to always put that in my bio from now on. I like rubber duckies. This is the American Pitka and bouquets. The little creature gathers plants for the winter. 200 times a day he runs up a sharp incline and places his gains in his cave. 200 times he goes back for more to get him by until spring. He will not hibernate, but he will eat. He can hide behind a bloom and pull it from the ground in front of an unsuspecting human to add the stem to a 60-pound haystack he hides. His bark, like a squeak toy, calls out, "This is mine, this is mine." His instinct is to gather all he can in the summer, even weeds. The poison plants taken he knows will taste sweet in winter. He welcomes the song of a moderate breeze, for in the heat he'll die. He embraces our dreams of mountains and hills and seeks solitude in secluded lands.
Yeah, well, very interesting. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
Whatever that says about us.
Yeah, I have to reread and contemplate that one. Thanks for sharing that, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's Mike Bales with the American Pitka and bouquets. Yeah, really interesting. All right. And next, let's go to a first-time caller, I think. Wayne? Maybe not. Maybe I should stop saying that.
Yeah,
I'm
I
never
think
sure.
I've told you.
I like saying a first-time
I know we
caller.
had a whole discussion
I
on there.
know.
I remember.
I haven't
Welcome back,
I haven't
Wayne.
been here in a while, and I'm the guy from Florida. Got a different hairdo.
Oh, yeah. Okay, nice.
Yeah,
Very long
Great
before.
to see you, Wayne. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah. Also,
Yes.
I like the hairdo. Can I say that?
Oh, thank
I don't
you.
remember before,
Appreciate
but
it.
it seems like a good edit, regardless.
Yeah.
The title of my poem is Betelgeuse, and it's about the star that's they're talking about going to explode. But what's weird about it is that many, many years ago, when my grandfather was alive, he had a minor stroke, but they told him he had to walk every night. So he and I would walk around a lake nearby, but he was a Navy guy, Navy and Coast Guard for 30 years, and he was taught to navigate by the stars. And part of he could name every star, major star in the sky. And he said, you see this series of stars, that'll form a circle. And then he would point out another circle of stars, and he would say, based on those two circles, I knew exactly where I was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Wow. That's wild.
That really
I was
is.
just saying to Tim how
Understanding.
envious I am of that skill. I know I will never possess it.
Yeah, well, I wonder if they even teach that anywhere now, that kind of thing.
It's wild.
Anyway, this is Betelgeuse, and you had another gentleman who talked about stars earlier, and it made me think of this, and I got it out real quick and sent it to you guys.
Oh, cool.
Betelgeuse, even you, mighty star, are bowing your head. Light you have carried now rests on your lap, shaking in shifts of dimming red. The floor, like aching knees, can no longer resist the weight of your furnace. Against an infinite nightstand, billions since birth, a beacon for evolved receptors, titled, My grandfather navigated on your point. He left us, remembering you, I'm sure. We gathered for him, as we do now, to look up. Less than 100,000 years is still the blink of an eye. With a chance, a blink of a blink, with a chance, they say, for tomorrow, when all you are will flare to the darkest simplicity, and nothing is where you were. What will we do with your name?
Yeah, beautiful poem.
Really pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Betelgeuse. Thanks so much for sharing that, Wayne. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming back. Hope you come back again soon.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys
Yeah,
again.
great.
Good to see
Definitely
you.
is,
And
yeah.
I love a Floridian too. My home
Yay,
state originally.
Florida.
Yay.
Except for my governor.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Wayne. Yep.
All right, take care.
Yeah, thanks so much. And there's Wayne with Betelgeuse. Wayne, what last name?
Yes.
What's your last name?
I usually go. My
Just go
book
by
is
Wayne?
Wayne S. Middle initial S. Last name Williams. So it's Wayne S. Williams.
Gotcha. Wayne S. Williams. Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Wayne. I want to be sure to
All
give
right.
you credit for that poem. Thanks so much. Take care.
Very good. Thank you.
Great to see you. Yep. Yeah, Wayne S. Williams with Betelgeuse. Next, let's go to Kimberly Gibson Tran.
Good evening, Tim and Katie.
Yeah.
Hi, how are
Great to see you, Kimberly.
Doing really well. So I clipped an image of the headline of the article. I saw this from National Geographic. Apparently, blue whales are not singing as much anymore.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
unfortunate. Yeah,
what
that's
the measurements are saying. They have these things called hydrophones that they're using under the ocean to listen. So, all right, my poem is called Current Events. Blue whales are going quiet, say the oceanographers who take readings from the deep. The idea is perhaps whales no longer have anything to say to us, our motors buzzing the music from the water, our drills killing the medium. Food is scarce, so they spend all their time searching instead of singing. In my local coffee shop called Promenade, I type this poem into my phone as a Muzak adaptation of the Smiths begs to let me get what I want this time. It's too pleasant. The emotional wine leached out. It doesn't carry. I still like this coffee shop. I wake up early to come here and be the only one. Something about a sunrise makes me believe in the magic of trying. I read this morning about the seeking of hungry whales. I sip my latte and get ready to talk to teenagers about colleges, about their options, futuring and arcs before us. I try to convince them that their paragraphs of resume soup hold no water. Try to think of just one time, I beg, one time you felt the world turn you new. And please, please write that. Have you ever seen a movie? I ask. I wish I could show them Linklater's Boyhood, filmed over 10 Texas summers. That scene where the boy asks his dad if elves and fairies are real. And Ethan Hawke asks back, did you know a blue whale's heart is the size of a car? A whole car, its heart.
Yeah, that's great. Love the movement toward that ending in that poem.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And how far it spirals off in a really interesting way.
Just went where my mind went.
Oh, great. Well, thanks so much for sharing
Thanks,
that, Kimberly.
Kimberly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Kimberly Gibson Tran with Current Events. Next, let's go to Amanda Harris.
So I had seen some kind of weird story about dogs paddleboarding, and I sort of didn't know what to make of it. I was like, I gotta write a poem about this. All right. Paddleboarding, told from the perspective of a dog. Humans are strange and magnificent. They walk on water, imitating a dolphin in their movements. I imagine myself mid-dance, two legs touching what my paws cannot pronounce. It's a strange feeling to swim this way, but even stranger to not touch the water at all.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's Amanda Harris with paddleboarding. Let's go to Matt Joseph next.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Hey.
Yeah, great to see
Hey
you,
guys.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, thanks so much. I've been away for a little while. My own hooded moose of a son returned from college, and that kept me busy. So
Great way to be, though. Yeah, for sure.
It is. It's great.
Mhm.
All right, so I'll just jump right in. So Archer and Sons. In Colombia, bandits on motorcycles leave sharp objects on the road to pierce tires, then take the stranded motorist to repair shops that are in on the scam. When I was a lad of 8 or 9, my friend and I, juvie seedlings ready to sprout, broke into a car, though to be fair, the door wasn't locked. And who the hell leaves their car unlocked on the streets of East Oakland but the terminally stupid? The punchline was the fat leather wallet lurking in the passenger seat, but rather than keep it, we showed our mothers and conjured a cock and bull tale of billfolds laying like overripe fruit on the sidewalk, a story so riddled and rank they might have gagged laughing, if not for the image of their grown sons in orange jumpsuits lifting receivers behind smudged glass. That's what the news feels like these days. Hoods stealing from me so they can sell me a story of their miraculous find, which is another way of saying that's how the world seems to be gyrating. Headlines as zigzag reflections, prismatic pixelations of the terribly real, happening somewhere else to someone I can't touch or heal. Each story I click, a cartoon ka-ching, a hot bolt fired from a hair trigger crossbow, held by an archer, who's there to whisk me to the nearby for-profit hospital, where they pull the arrow from my chest and close the gaping hole so I can live, to be pierced again, only to learn my insurance has expired, the policy having recently been acquired by the mega conglomerate Archer and Sons, whose motto is and always has been, since at least sometime last week, our aim is true.
Well, tell it like it is. Thanks so much for sharing that
Yeah,
one.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. I love this. I love this, and I wish I had like 7 hours to like digest every person's poem, but we don't. So thanks for doing this.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks so much for being here.
We're glad you're a part of it.
Always appreciate it.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, that was Matt Joseph with Archer and Sons. Let's see. Next up is Hammett Malik.
Hi.
Hi, Hammett.
Hey, Hammett. Great to see you.
Hey, you too. Thank you. Sorry, I've been ducking in and out today. And it's another divorce poem. I didn't intend it to be a divorce poem, but that's the title that came.
I
And the
understand
story
completely,
is-
Hammett. Sorry.
The next one for the
And
mix.
The story is about a school in Sydney that wants to buy part of the street it's on to help with its parking situation. Divorce. The Shaw School wants to buy part of the street they're on. They told the council they need it to better control school drop-off and pick-up, and nobody else is using it anyway. If they own it, they wouldn't break any traffic rules. If they owned it, they wouldn't break any traffic rules because they would make the rules. Who do I speak to buy the space around me? I need a buffer with my own laws of gravity. I could stay in the spice aisle at Coles and read every ingredient without anyone getting close enough to set off my I'm in someone's way alarm. Sound entering my space would walk with its head bowed like a monk. When my niece and nephew screech about who drew the best dog, I'll nod and smile like a Buddhist nun. And of course the calories, they won't register in here at all. I'm sick of fighting someone else's laws.
Yeah, that's a
That's
great
really
one.
neat.
Yeah.
I love the
Mhm.
turn to the personal again on that one. That is funny to imagine if we can make those same decisions in life.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much, Hammett.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Hammett Malik with Divorce.
And the title that changes to
Yeah.
the whole meaning of
mhm.
the poem.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it does. A great title.
Yeah.
All right, and let's see. Next up on the Zoom, we have Ali.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Ali, great to see you.
Great seeing you too as well. I have to admit, I kind of did not follow the prompt because my news story is not obscure, nor is it offbeat. But I wrote about the World Darts Federation banning trans women from playing in women's sports. On Noah Lynn Van Leuven getting banned from playing darts as a woman. They want you shot, to shoot your dick instead, to throw your identity like spat out gum enclosed in the wrapping it came in, like a soldier's corpse faggoted in the flag it bore, words divorced from meaning, fairness.
Is that divorced again?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
think
Ali.
that applies.
Mhm,
I hadn't heard
yeah.
that story. No one wrote about it in Poet Response.
Yeah.
No.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Ali with Noah Lynn Van Leuven getting banned from playing darts as a woman. Yeah. And last but not least, let's see what Ted Bernal Guevara has for us. He's got a photo of is it
Snow White?
Yeah, it's Snow White. Is Snow White kissed in the end? Isn't that just Sleeping Beauty?
Spoiler alert!
I ruined it for everybody.
But
no.
she doesn't look like she's enjoying being kissed.
No, she does not look like she. Yeah, that's not. All right, and so here's the poem: Tongued. The trick to reality is to go to the next level. Yes, I needed to wake up, but to my youth, which is probably 12, you've made it haphazard. Now I have to press the snooze button and push back on blissfulness. Uncanny this sunrise to my eligible adulthood 10 minutes later. Ooh, what a rib rack. But he needs a tic-tac. Well, thanks so much for sharing. That was Tongued by Ted Bernal Guevara. Always interesting. All right, and that is going to wrap up the... Right, am I missing anybody? That's going to wrap up the Zoom for tonight and the prompt lines. Now, the haiku for this week, it's a little one right here. Now, there's a, well, here you go. I'll just read it. This is a true little story. Okay. Opossum in the garage. Oh, a possum. There we go. That is the truth. There's a possum in our garage. Hopefully not living there.
Hopefully not anymore. Last night.
Yeah, last night we
or
had
she.
Yeah, he or she. I didn't see the little babies, so on her back. So I don't know. But yeah, we slept with the garage door open because hoping that we'll skid her out because it was like hidden very well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I didn't see it. That's funny.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is the haiku for this week. And now what's up for the prompt for next week, Katie? Here we go.
All right. Next week, or this week, I guess. Now, after I read it, it becomes this week, I guess.
It is.
Funny. We're going to write a sonnet in which someone sings. So sonnet, of course, means little song. Let's get those singers in there.
Very nice. Okay. Great prompt, Katie. What inspired this one? Anything?
It just popped into my head. Oh, actually, it popped in my head, but I think it popped into my head in a way that is going to be like what I end up writing about.
Okay. Well, don't reveal. Oh, okay, go ahead. No, okay.
Then I'll feel like I have to write about it, so I'll save it for next week.
Okay.
Maybe I will. Maybe I won't.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Waiting. But it mainly also too, I wanted you to write a sonnet. So selfish too.
Well,
Jared Campbell's not unhappy. Also,
that's true. He's got the big thumbs up. Thanks, Jared.
He's like, yeah, I've got five as of this evening.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much, Katie, for that wonderful prompt. And for the guest next week on the Rattlecast is going to be Sneha Madhavan Rees. And so Sneha's been in several issues of Rattle. Interestingly, 2 wonderful poems about food. One in the food issue currently, and one back many, many years ago. She's very interested in science, has a science background, and her book is called Elementary Particles, which you can imagine probably has a lot of science going on. So we'll check that out.
For a book of poems. I like that.
It definitely is, yeah. So that's going to be next week's guest, Sneha Madhavan Rees. That's going to be next Sunday, August 10th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Also, your sonnets in which someone sings. Looking forward to that. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.